Hey everybody, it is Prince's friend. We actually just did the live stream last night and it brought up one major question that I think I answered it okay on in the live stream, but I kind of wanted to do a little bit more in-depth comparison. And the question is Revolution versus NPG. Now, of course, this isn't counting the Lovesexy Band or Third Eye Girl or any of the other, iterations of the new power generation. So first what I want to do is I want to define who I'm talking about when I say Revolution versus the NPG. Who I'm talking about for the Revolution is Wendy, Lisa, Bobby Z, Brown Mark, Dr. Fink. So I'm not counting Sheila E., who sometimes was there. I'm not counting Jill Jones or Des Dickerson, who were in some of the earlier adaptations of it. And I'm also not counting Brooks and Wally and Jerome, who were in the later iterations of it. Also not Miko. Like, those were the transitionary people over into the Lovesexy Band. So for the NPG, we're talking Tommy Hayes, Michael B., Tommy Barbarella, Levi Caesar Jr., and Sonny B. Now, Maite was a dancer who sometimes, had a voice here and there, but she's not going to factor in to this decision. Neither will I be using Tony M or Rosie Gaines, Kirky J, Damon D. They're not going to really be part of this discussion. For that reason, I'm actually not going to be counting Diamonds and Pearls in this comparison, since Tony M and Rosie Gaines actually were a huge part of the Diamonds and Pearls album. I'm not going to count that. So the first thing I want to compare is how prolific was Prince with each of the band. When I'm talking about the Revolution's albums, I'm talking 1999, which was huge at the time, and that's what got him on MTV, and that's what really shot Prince to stardom, was 1999. Then we have Purple Rain, which made him the universal icon that he is today. Then we have Around the World in a Day, which was where he started to kind of alienate some of his people, but it's got Raspberry Beret on it. And then there's Parade, which obviously has Kiss and was attached to a movie, and it was just amazing. The Revolution had those 4 albums, and I'm not counting any projects that didn't get off the ground. I'm talking just the ones that were released officially. Now for the NPG actually had more albums that he ended up doing with them. He did the Lovesexy album. Again, I'm not counting Diamonds and Pearls. He did the Lovesexy album. He did The Undertaker. He did Come. He did Exodus. He did The Gold Experience. He did Chaos and Disorder. All of that was the NPG. That is 4 albums versus 6 albums officially. So if I was to give it to one band or the other based on prolificness, it would obviously have to go to the NPG. Now, of course, if we compare what the band members ended up doing after the fact, we know that Wendy and Lisa had their own whole career. They're all their own albums and everything. They were working on Our Music. Dr. Fink actually continued on with Prince after the Revolution and was a member of the Lovesexy Band as well. So that is, I think, big kudos for him. I would say that 3 members of the Revolution ended up doing a lot of stuff post the band. So if we go to the NPG, not so much. I do know that Tommy Hayes has continued on as kind of a band leader and whatnot of the NPG, and he's been there for years. But pretty much the rest of the members didn't really do much after this group of the NPG ended up kind of breaking off ties with Prince. They did get back together to do an album with Nick Jonas called Nick Jonas and the Administration, where they're the administration. I'm going to be doing a review on that soon. So that was an album that they did, and I thought that was pretty cool. I kept looking for administration albums, but I didn't really find one. Success after the band, definitely the Revolution ends up winning that. So if we were to compare critical acclaim, I mean, the Revolution had Purple Rain, The Revolution had Purple Rain, had Let's Go Crazy, 1999, Kiss, Raspberry Beret, Pop Life, so many songs that Prince is now known for. The Revolution had a hand in making those a thing. The NPG never really had anything that quite lived up to what the Revolution could do commercially. None of their albums even cracked the top 10 best-selling Prince albums. Diamonds and Pearls was technically 5, but again, I'm not counting that one. However, around the time that Prince was with the NPG, that time period, Prince didn't care about critical acclaim. He had already shed his name, he had written slave on his face, and he was making waves in the industry as a whole, and he was bringing attention to the injustice that record companies were doing to their clients. So Prince wasn't really on a path of self-discovery anymore like he was kind of in the 80s. He already knew who he was by that point, and he was sticking to his principles, and he was kind of shoving his principles in everybody's faces. So I would say critical acclaim definitely ends up going to The Revolution, but I think that honestly he made more waves in the 90s post his huge success. So I don't know, I think that one's gonna be a tie for critical acclaim. So the last thing that I want to do here is I kind of want to compare the individual members of each band. We'll see who comes out on top. So for drums, we have Bobby Z versus Michael B. The winner, hands down, Michael B. He was just a hugely dynamic drummer, and that's not a slight against Bobby Z. Bobby Z is a great drummer, but Michael just had that thing, like, oh god, like his drumming was just so good. Like the beginning of Shh, I can't even see anybody else coming up with that. And other band members have, you know, duplicated it, but Michael B came up with that, so Michael B definitely. So for guitar, we have Wendy versus Levi Seacer Jr. Now, I'm actually going to give this one to Wendy, because Wendy was an amazing guitarist, first off. They're both really good guitarists, but I think Wendy edges him out. Also, I think that as a guitarist, Levi was good, but I actually really liked him as the bassist for the Lovesexy band much more than when he was the guitarist for the NPG. So I will say Wendy, just because I prefer Levi on bass. Now we're going to go Brown Mark versus Sonny B on the bass. This one definitely has to go to Sonny B. If you look into the stories even just of how each of them kind of joined the band, you know, Brown Mark, Prince found him in a pancake shop and gave him a shot, and he ended up being awesome, and that's great. But Prince and Sonny B used to run around when they were younger, and they used to have Battle of the Bands, and Prince actually looked at Sonny B as an equal because he was such a good musician, and I have to agree with him. So Sonny B, definitely. Plus he can sing, and he writes songs, and he does a bunch of stuff, so definitely Sonny B. On keyboards, now we have Dr. Fink versus Tommy Barbarella. This is like a smackdown because they are both amazing. Dr. Fink has like the whole costume thing going with the stethoscope and the shades with the smock. Tommy Barbarella had the hair flop that he could do. You know what, I'm going to call this one a tie, because it's so hard for me to say who is the better keyboardist, because I think they both frickin' rocked the house down. So I'm going to say that's a tie between Dr. Fink and Tommy Barbarella. And on organs, we have Lisa Coleman versus Tommy Hayes. Now this is a tough one because I really love Tommy. He's got a real flair for, you know, really making something funky. Lisa, though, on the other hand, Lisa had a really awesome way of taking something and kind of elevating it. It's kind of like in two different directions. Like Tommy he'd get it all nice and funky down here, and whereas Lisa would take something and she would go, oh, and it would become this thing up here. So for that reason, I'm actually going to give it to Lisa. She could take something bright and make it dark, or she could take something dark and make it bright. I think her versatility on the organs, I think it played a big part in why The Revolution was so good. So for those of you who are keeping score, that actually means it's a tie between the bands. So that actually brings us to the last band member, and that would be Prince in the early 80s versus Prince in the early 90s. Now the way that I kind of think of these two personas of Prince is one is all about experimentation, and he's about breaking the social constructs and bringing sex and religion together, writing hits that will go with movies and, you know, all these amazing things. But it was really like, if you think about Prince in the early 80s, it was all about experimentation, and it was all about seeing what he could do to kind of break down a wall or to break a rule and still get away with it. Prince in the early 90s, however, was less about experimentation and was about direct rebellion. It was no longer about breaking the rules and seeing what you could get away with. It was about breaking the rules and daring somebody to call you out on it. He had so much more attitude. Everything was way more funky because, you know, he had a whole decade growing and becoming a better musician, so I have to give it to Prince in the early 90s. I think Prince in the early 90s was way better than Prince in the early 80s, despite what record sales would tell you. So with that in mind, Prince breaks the tie and gives it to the NPG. The NPG rules. Revolution is awesome. NPG wins this SmackDown. Hopefully you enjoyed that Versus episode. If you have an opinion on whether the Revolution or the NPG should win, throw it down in the comments, and I would love to continue this discussion. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel, hit the little bell for notifications, follow me on Facebook and Twitter, check out the Patreon, and may you live to see the dawn.